morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar, Twitter for Your Business. My name is Jill Bastian, and presenting today is Ellery Long, and he's going to take you through some of the things that you need to know about Twitter for Your Business. Just a couple things before we get started. First of all, this is one of our shorter webinars, so it's about 20 to 25 minutes long, and then we will have a Q&A at the end. So if you think of some questions along the way, go ahead and type them in the box that you see in your GoToWebinar window, and we'll be happy to answer as many of those as we can at the end of the webinar. The most popular question we get, and if you've ever been to any of our webinars, you already know what this is, and I've already gotten it, and our webinar just started, is this being recorded? And the answer is yes, it is being recorded. We will put this up on our recorded webinars page after this is over, so later on this afternoon. And we will send out a follow-up email that has a little more information and a link to that recorded webinar. So you guys will be able to go through and look at some of these slides later on if you need to. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Ellery, and he is going to teach you all kinds of things about Twitter.
Thanks, Jill. So this is the first of our series of social webinars for our spring webinar series. So we're going to be doing one for Facebook and one for LinkedIn. And they're all intro, kind of getting started for those of you who maybe have signed up for an account in these various networks, but still think you don't quite understand the value you're getting or what you could do to get more value from it. Later in the summer and into the fall, we'll start doing some more advanced webinars on this, but today we're really going to focus on the basics. So the agenda, we're going to start with just some general, what is Twitter, and what are kind of, a lot of the questions we get at user seminars are just about the vocabulary that goes along with it. So we're just going to go through some standard Twitter acronyms and vocabulary. Then we're going to go into some best practices and tips, and I'm going to show you a lot of examples there, as well as some tools that you can use to manage your Twitter presence. So let's get started. First off, Twitter, fast, furious, and fun, I like to call it. It's well known around VR here that Twitter is definitely my personal favorite of the social networks that we participate in. It's really real time and up to the minute, very conversational, and so I use it both managing the VR Twitter account as well as a personal one, and I'm on there all day. There's a lot of big brands, small businesses, and we're hoping that if you're not already on Twitter, we'll be able to inspire you to join today. So Twitter, at its core, is a really good tool to facilitate word-of-mouth marketing because things are happening so fast, as well as brand advocacy. A lot of conversations are happening, and there's a lot of influencers out on Twitter speaking about industries and speaking about brands, and it's a great way to get in contact with them. It also enables really quick reactions to customer-driven conversations about your brand, whether they're negative or positive, and it's really your opportunity to shape the conversation. I had the pleasure yesterday of seeing Brian Solis talk at the AdTech conference here in San Francisco, and he put it in a really good way. He basically said that people now, customers, are not going to your website to find out information about your brand. They're going to social networks and asking their community and looking for the conversations that are already happening. So what's the shift that's happened is that your brand equity is not defined by the messages that you put out, rather by the messages that your customers are putting out about you. So using Twitter for all it's worth is a great way for you to be part of that conversation and make sure that your message and your equity isn't being skewed. And lastly, it's a really powerful way to look at your competition. More likely than not, your competitors are on Twitter as well. And by just keeping some search terms out there and following the buzz that's going on about your competition, it's a great way to see kind of strategies and buzz about them that you never probably had insight into before. So some general tips. Consistency is really important with Twitter and being fresh. So It's impossible though to think that you're going to be able to come up with original content, all the time to keep that consistency up. So a great rule of thumb is to repurpose content whenever you can. Some of that content is your own content, things you already have. If you're a VR customer, you've got our social sharing feature. We provide a hosted version of your email that you can tweet out there. And it's content you already have, content you're already sending via your email list. So it's just one more channel that you can share it with. It's most importantly, you want to be providing value. This isn't necessarily a marketing tool in the hard sell kind of way. You want to be providing help and value to your customers and giving them a reason to follow you. So blog posts from your company blog, news about the company, contests, fun things that they can get involved with. But again, it doesn't all have to be about you and your company. Take advantage of following people and brands that you're interested in, and they're going to provide content for you that you can retweet. And we'll talk more about that in a second. But the idea is to share media that you're consuming as well, with with the thought that your customers are following you because they're interested in your industry, and that you'll have relevant things to say. So, industry trends, white papers, studies, blog posts from other blogs you're reading. These are all great things to share with your community. And also remember that it is, you know, social media. There is still the social aspect and there is etiquette attached to it. So make sure to thank people for mentioning your brands, retweet positive mentions. If somebody's saying something nice about you, there's no reason you can't share that with other followers. And when you do get retweeted or mentioned positively, make sure to thank your followers via an at reply, something we'll also talk about. And that's just basic human psychology. People love to be acknowledged. Even power users of Twitter, when I retweet uh, some a Twitter celebrity, so to speak, and I get an at mention from them or a thank you, like I'll stand up out of my cubicle and be like, "Hey Jill, guess who just mentioned me on Twitter?" It's just human nature, and remember that your followers are not just their avatar or a number of followers that you're counting, but these are real people on the other end, and they like to be acknowledged as well. So our quick glossary of Twitter. There are at mentions and at replies. At mentions serve as essentially mentioning someone within the body of a tweet. So here, VR for Small Biz is of course Vertical Responses account. So Kim, who is our director of conversion and retention marketing, is using an at mention in the context of check out Vertical Responses recorded webinars. Similarly, you can refer to a person. So Foodie Girl here is actually another VR employee, Liz. And so the at mention here is working in the context of instead of Liz's name. So special thanks to Foodie Girl slash Liz and Rob from VR. Now, an at reply is different. An at reply is when you put the username at the beginning of a tweet. And so this here at reply is really only going to be read by the person that you're mentioning. So VR for Small Biz. Nobody else who's following Mary Smith, unless they're following VR as well, is going to see this tweet in their stream. So this is much more of a direct kind of communication to the person that you're trying to reach out to, but it's not, be cognizant of the fact that it's not going out into your public stream. If you wanted it to go out into your public stream, but you still wanted to start a tweet with the at mention in it, the kind of general rule of thumb for that is to put a period before the at sign. So this, Twitter won't recognize that at as the beginning. It'll see the period, and that will broadcast out to anybody who follows you. Retweets or RTs. RT Classic versus RT New is kind of a term that's from TweetDeck, but I think it does a good job of explaining what the different kinds of retweets are. So when Twitter changed their format a while back, they changed retweets to what you'll see Here, this is an example of me retweeting John Lester of the Red Sox. I'm a big Red Sox fan, and if any of you follow baseball right now, you probably know that that's kind of a sore subject. So we'll skip along. But the idea is the new retweets. When I retweet someone, it shows up as the tweet shows up as their avatar and as coming from them. And similarly, you'll see this is a tweet that I tweeted a couple weeks ago, and I can go and see who retweeted that tweet. But it would be me showing up in their followers' streams rather than them. So the opposite of that in Retweet Classic is where the retweet still shows as coming from the person who's doing the retweeting. So this is VR for Small Biz retweeting Scarrett here, and so it shows up as RT at Scarrett rather than just showing up as their avatar in the stream. And one nice thing about that is if you want to add your own thoughts and your own text to it, you can see on the lower example that we're able to kind of put our own twist and our own thoughts. So for our followers, telling them why they might be interested in this list. And if you do a retweet new, you don't have the ability to kind of add your own text to it. So that's kind of the two uses and ways that you can share other people's content. Via is another way to do that, and Via's used differently by a lot of different people. Sometimes people just use it to say where they're sending you. So hey, this is an article via Mashable, and then they'll link to the Mashable article. I personally don't think that that's necessary, since you are, after all, linking to Mashable in that. So I use Via more to acknowledge who I might have heard about something from. So Michael Schwartz here is linking to an article that he saw either that we had tweeted at Vertical Response or had seen on our blog. So the link is actually going to another site, Social Media Examiner, for example. But he is acknowledging the fact that he found out about the article from Vertical Response. So he gives that kind of shout out, the Via at VR for Small Biz. The last thing we're going to look at in our definition section here are hashtags. So hashtags are a way to basically categorize a tweet into searchable terms. So here in the example on the left, you'll see that we hashtag the term email marketing. And the reason you do this is there will be people who are searching for tweets about email marketing who aren't necessarily following you. So they go and search for hashtag email marketing, and your tweet will come into their stream. It's a good way to reach people who are looking for information that you might provide and gain new followers. And so the way Twitter works with hashtags is it turns it into a link. You can literally click on hashtag email marketing, and it'll bring up a new search column of all the conversation that's going on about email marketing. So now that we kind of have a basic understanding of the dialogue that's going on there's a couple things to keep in mind to get the most out of your Twitter activity and increasing engagement. And engagement's a word you hear a lot in social media, and that's the ultimate goal, is to be engaging your customer and having a back and forth conversation. So the first thing here is what I mentioned earlier: consistency. Your followers aren't going to keep following you if your account goes stale. Every couple of weeks I'll go through and purge my account, so to speak, and look. And if somebody look at people I'm following, and if they haven't tweeted in 2 weeks or a month, they're kind of, it's a ghost town, and then that's never good, and that's not a good way to keep followers. So there's no rule about how often you have to tweet, whether it's once a day, 10 times a day, and that's going to have to do with your followers and your industry, and just test it out. See when you get the most engagement. If you're tweeting more, are you getting more retweets? Are you getting more @ mentions? And see what works for you. There's also some things to get the most out of every tweet, regardless of how many you're sending. One is the hashtags that we just talked about in an effort to reach new followers and reach new people out there who are interested in the subjects that you're talking about. Relevancy and timeliness are really important. The fresher and newer news that you can get out there has a much better chance of getting retweeted. Um, and asking for a retweet works. People, you'd be surprised, particularly, you don't want to abuse it, but particularly when you're sharing new content that you've created, it's perfectly fine to put at the end of a tweet, please RT, and people more often than not will. And lastly, you want to make it shareable, and that can mean a lot of things. But one example of that is you have to be aware of the 140 character limit on Twitter. And so if somebody is retweeting you in the classic way where they want to add a little bit of text ahead of that, if you've already filled out that 140 characters, they can't do it, and they can't fit your name in front of the tweet or whatever it is. So it might be a good idea to try and even stay under that 140 to make it easier for people to share. So we have a little example here of JCPenney. They've used a topical hashtag, so New Year's Eve. They posted this the day before New Year's Eve. And they're asking a question to their audience. What will you be wearing? Which is, obviously relevant to anyone who's following JCPenney. They're talking about clothes, but they're not being self-promotional. They're not talking about themselves. They're just trying to spark some interest in a relevant and timely subject with their followers. And that's that next point there, asking questions and initiating a dialogue. You can also search for conversations that you can add value to. The same way that I just showed you that column of hashtags, you can go searching for hashtags, see people that are talking about things that you talk about, and join the conversation with @replies and @mentions. And lastly, be open when you're responding to customer questions and support issues. And we'll show you a good example of people who are doing that. But everything on Twitter is public and available to anyone. So if people are putting complaints out there or asking, throwing their questions out into an empty void, other people are going to see that. So it reflects well on your brand to address things quickly. So now some examples. This slide, if you guys did my last social media webinar, you have seen this slide, but we will have a couple more examples too. But I think, it's actually, I was just talking about Jill before we started here, it's surprisingly hard to find great examples of businesses on Twitter. And that's hopefully, we're trying, and I guess the takeaway there is if you're having trouble kind of getting it, that you're not alone. There's not, it's all new and it's all being developed. So the most important part is to get out there and kind of find your voice. So our first example here is from the Grilled Cheesery, which is a food truck in Nashville where I used to live before I came out to San Francisco. And you'll see they're doing a couple things well. Down at the bottom of their stream here, there's some retweets. Those are the new style of retweet where it shows up as the person who originally posted it. And these are positive mentions of the Grilled Cheesery's brand. And so they're sharing that and kind of, it is promotional, but it's not, an obnoxious talking about myself kind of promotional. It's showing that other people are advocates out there and supporting that. And then at the top, you'll see an @reply that they did to a customer, telling that customer who would have asked them via Twitter where the food truck was going to be, they respond to it. And it's a good idea, if you can, 100% of the time, respond to anybody who's asking you a direct question. You don't have to respond 100% of the time if there's someone just talking about and your brand comes up in context. But if they ask you a direct question to your Twitter account, it's a really good idea to get back to them. And you'll see Grilled Cheesery two tweets down already said where they were going to be that day. So it's not like the information wasn't out there, but it shows, it's good for the brand to show that they're listening to their customers. The example here from Whole Foods is a quick one. I just wanted to show that they have a unique URL up here in their bio section where they have wholefoodsmarket.com/Twitter. This is a really good idea for a couple reasons. For one, they have a Twitter-specific landing page when people come to their site. So it acknowledges that they came there from Twitter and thanks them for following them on Twitter. But from a business point of view as well, it helps then you can start looking at things like ROI when you can see where people are coming from to your site. So if they have a similar /Facebook URL on their Facebook site and the Twitter one here, they can start seeing what social networks are driving the most traffic to the site, which is the ultimate goal for them. Simon & Schuster here does a couple of good things. At the top in their bio section, they give a reason for you to follow. They say, follow us for book, author, and industry news and free book giveaways. You have to remember, social networks in general are places where your customers are there to talk to their friends and be social. It's not necessarily just instinctual for someone to want to follow a brand, particularly if your brand is not all that entertaining. I don't know how to say exactly, but if you're a B2B brand or something, it's hard to have that emotional connection sometimes. So you want to give as many reasons as possible. And so Simon & Schuster right here just says off the bat what value you're going to get out of following their account on Twitter. And within their tweet stream here, they're doing a couple nice things. One, they're sharing other Twitter accounts. Now, these are all imprints under the Simon & Schuster brand, but they're all various Twitter accounts that are talking about things that Simon & Schuster believes is going to be relevant to their followers. And so their followers see this and say, hey, thanks. I didn't know about this Twitter account. I'm going to start following it. And that's giving them good information. And at the bottom here, you see kind of a promotion. Again, this is incentives. People react to incentives. So they are engaging their fans by compelling them to retweet, which is good for Simon & Schuster because it gets their message out in a viral nature. And they're offering a reward, a free book in this scenario, to their fans for spreading the word. So, you've got advocates out there. More likely than not, if somebody's following you on Twitter, they are a fan of your brand, and, leverage that. Next, we have Gilt Support here. So Gilt Group is an online retailer, and I think they do a really, really good job with support. If you are thinking about using Twitter for support, customer support for your business, there are some best practices and ways to handle that. So what Gilt does that I really like, up here in the bio, they actually say who customer support is. They give, names behind the account. So I think the picture up there is actually members of their support team. And they say Caitlin, Rodney, Adam, and so on are the people you're talking to. And then you'll see in the second and third tweet in their stream, you always know who's doing the tweeting. So Zach here is signing out. Okay, guilty one, stepping aside to say hi to Alvina. And then Alvina checks in. Thanks, Zach. And that adds a personality to it, and it isn't this, particularly with customer service, where people might be coming in feeling a little bit grumpy. This is a good way to, remind your followers, too, that there is a person on the other side of the account, the same way that you want to acknowledge your followers like they're real people. And at the bottom here, you'll see, and this is an example of a quick response to a problem. So, whoever this is obviously tweeted something to Gilt Support that they're having an issue, and Gilt gets right on it and says for you to DM, that's direct message, us your order number so that they can help it out. And that's another good takeaway for using Twitter for customer service. After that initial tweet, don't be afraid to take it offline. Often the Twitter is the way that they're first reaching out, but once you make contact, obviously in 140 characters or less with a complex customer support issue, that's pretty tough to deal with. So give them the best phone number to reach you at, best email, whatever it is, and take the actual conversation offline after that. And the last example we're going to look at is a nonprofit. Now, Vertical Response has a ton of nonprofit customers. May have something to do with the fact that our services are free for them. And we love our nonprofit customers, and often they're really some of the best social media users. And it's actually not hard to figure out why. Causes and nonprofits are made for social media because you know, there's this affinity that people have for the cause. So as Charity Water here is doing a couple things. They share things about water, a children's book in this first tweet here, that anybody who's following them has already identified themselves as really caring about this cause. So as much um, relevant kind of good information that Charity Water can share with their followers is a good way to keep Charity Water front of mind with their followers when it is time to make those donations and pledges. And then the other thing here I wanted to point out is this photo of the day. Something that's a nice touch for any Twitter account or any really social media activity is recurring things. So they do a photo of the day. You could do a featured customer of the week. Just some ideas that are easy to do but give you recurring content. So lastly, before we wrap up and do some questions, we are going to look at, and I'm just going to quickly fly through this because the webinar will be available recorded afterwards, and there's a ton of tools out there, and it really just comes down to what works best for you. So rather than go into the individual tools, I just want to give you an idea of what you can use tools for. So for one, we keep talking about engagement, and all these tools help you to measure that. And engagement can be a lot of things. It's not just your follower count. In fact, that oftentimes has very little to do with the amount of engagement you're having. But how long are your followers coming? Are they just following you for a particular promotion you do and then dropping off? How many retweets and mentions are you getting? These are all things you can look at. Then, there's tools. I personally don't ever even really log on to twitter.com. I use both Hootsuite and TweetDeck to manage various Twitter accounts. And these are just both online and desktop clients you can use to really organize your Twitter activity a little better. Um, TweetMeme, Trendistic, and TwitScoop are some examples of ways that you can find. Jill's Jill's laughing at that. Yeah, some of these names are funny. Well, I'll be the first to admit it. You can find trends and hashtags that are going on. So if you're looking for things to talk about and looking for conversations that are popular, these kind of tools are popular. WeFollow and Twello are Twitter account directories. One of the best ways to get new followers is to follow other people in your same space, industry, what have you. So these are account directories. If you're a law firm, they list all the lawyers who are on Twitter and things like that. Clout, Twitter Counter, these guys are metrics, so that's how you can use these tools to count your mentions and retweets. And lastly, Google Analytics. Make sure your site is tagged appropriately, and you can start measuring traffic that's coming from Twitter that's related to sales and acquisitions that you have. And this kind of leads you to the holy grail, the return on investment there. Yes, it is possible, and it's getting even easier to start attaching ROI to your social media behavior. So that's some of the ways you can do it. And we have one example. This is TweetDeck, which I use for my personal account, but because the life of because the social media manager never sleeps, I have all my vertical response search terms in my personal account as well. So this is what I was talking about organizing. I have these various columns that show me what conversation is happening. And you can see over here, this is somebody who asks vertical response or constant contact. They're not talking to me directly. They're putting a question out there just into the Twitter sphere, the Twitter universe. And that gave me an opportunity to jump in and say, hey, why don't you, if you have any questions, happy to answer them. We have a free trial, provide them a link. And then you'll see over here on the left side of the screen, that then started a conversation back and forth. And this customer, Robin, started asking questions and eventually signed up for the account. So that's a person who I would never have known without searching to see what conversations were happening. So I think we're at the end of our webinar.
We are. You know what? I'm going to put this, oops, I'm going to put this slide up while we do Q&A in case you guys wanted to make some notes. So, if you haven't already,